Welcome and very good evening, dear doctors. Today we are going to discuss the previous year questions, and today we are going to discuss from biochemistry with some very interesting topics. So let's start our discussion. True about the Warburg effect. Options are here. Option A makes cancer cell immortal. Option B, aerobic glycolysis with lactate formation. Option C, produces more ATP, and option D, decrease the glucose uptake. So go through the questions and answer the correct one. So here the correct option is option B, that is the aerobic glycolysis with lactate formation. Otto Warburg, the German biochemist, first discovered the unusual characteristics of neoplastic cells or cancer cells regarding the bioenergetics. Okay, so and actually for this discovery he got the prestigious Nobel Award at that particular time. And as you all know that glycolysis is one of the most important energy generation procedure of the cells, and as you all know it occurs in the cytosol. There are two processes related to the glycolysis: aerobic pathway and the anaerobic pathway. Mostly the glycolysis follows the aerobic pathway, that is the presence of oxygen. So in case of cancer cell, you can see that the typical they take up the large amount of glucose and the metabolize it to the lactic acid or lactate, even in the presence of oxygen. This observation is termed as the Warburg effect, and it is actually characterized by the aerobic glycolysis with lactate formation. Cancer cell actually use the glycolysis over oxidative phosphorylation even when the oxygen is available, and producing the more lactate. So let's exclude the other option. The option A, that is the makes cancer cell immortal. Actually immortality is due to the telomerase activation, not due to the Warburg effect. And in option C, it is produces more ATP. Anaerobic glycolysis is a low ATP pathway, and it generates 2 ATP when compared with the normal aerobic glycolysis pathway. From this pathway, we know that 38 ATP generated ultimately on an average 30 to 32 numbers. So option C also is the incorrect answer. And come to the option D, that is the decreased glucose uptake. Actually cancer cell increase the glucose uptake, and they need more ATP, but they are utilizing the anaerobic pathway of glycolysis. This is the fast process but generates the low ATP. For this reason, they need more glucose to enter into the cell. So more glucose means more lactate will be produced, and this lactate ultimately will be utilized by the liver in neoglucogenesis, and this is a condition where there will be hypermetabolism, and as you see it in the cancer patient, then this is called the cancer cachexia. Okay, and this occurs due to the excess lactate production, which must be metabolized through the liver, causing the hypermetabolism and enhancing the catabolic state of the patient, and thus is termed as the cancer cachexia. Okay, so let's come to the point, the Warburg effect in cancer metabolism. Tumor cell or neoplastic cell preferentially use the glycolysis despite the adequate oxygen, and this is called and for this reason it is called the aerobic glycolysis, and this is first described by the Otto Warburg, the German biochemist, as I have already said. In normal cellular energy metabolism, we all know that the typical glycolysis occurs in the cytoplasm or cytosol of the cell, and glucose, the substrate, is metabolized through this pathway. Other carbohydrates like fructose, galactose, sucrose, they also follow the same pathway. There is a glycolytic pathway to be metabolized. Okay, and the final product in the cytosol through the glycolytic pathway is the pyruvate. Here you know that there are three key enzymes. Number one, hexokinase or glucokinase. Number two, phosphofructokinase, and number three, pyruvate kinase. And in glycolytic pathway, there are typical in glycolysis, two ATP is generated. Actually, glycolysis is having the two phase. Number one, the investment phase, where the 2 ATP is utilized, and in payoff phase 4 ATP is generated. So ultimately 2 ATP, resultant 2 ATP will be generated in glycolytic pathway. Now if the glucose metabolism undergoes the aerobic process, pyruvate will be the end product in the cytosol. But if it follows the anaerobic pathway, pyruvate will be converted to the lactate by lactate dehydrogenase. As this anaerobic pathway, anaerobic glycolysis, glycolysis in anaerobic pathway actually takes place during the heavy exercise. In a heavy exercise, it is a situation, it is a low oxygen situation. For survival of the muscle as well as following its activity, energy generation will be required. So the anaerobic glycolysis takes place during the time of muscular exercise, and thus excess lactate is produced at that particular time. If we can exercise in a stable oxygen rich condition, then the typical aerobic pathway will be followed. And another thing that you should know, that the mitochondria is deficient in erythrocyte. So RBC or erythrocyte is totally dependent on the glycolytic pathway for generating the ATP. This is very important. So the end product in aerobic glycolysis, that is the pyruvate, thus produced, enters into the mitochondria, where it encounters with the pyruvate dehydrogenase complex and enters into the Krebs cycle, producing the acetyl CoA. And in a Krebs cycle, you know that the reducing equivalents are produced, and that is utilized in the electron transport chain, ultimately producing the said number of adenosine triphosphate or ATP. This is the total entire bioenergetics, where the glucose is fully oxidized and produce around 38 number of adenosine triphosphate. But this is a slow process. And neoplastic cell is they usually not prefer this pathway, this slow pathway, for variety of reasons. Let's discuss. So metabolic switch. In metabolic switch, and this metabolic switch or metabolic reprogramming is called the Warburg effect. And what is this? That is, the cancer cell converts pyruvate to lactate even in the presence of oxygen. And predominant glycolysis rather than mitochondrial oxidation. Here the only 2 ATP generated per glucose, but as I have already said, more glucose is utilized by the cancer cell to generate more ATP or energy to get the for this process. So why the tumors or the cancer cells prefer a low ATP pathway? Here are the reasons. Glycolysis is faster than the oxidative phosphorylation. The intermediates produced in the process of glycolysis are utilized by the cancer cell or neoplastic cell for nucleotide synthesis. And all those intermediates also support the lipid and amino acid synthesis. All those things helps to sustain the rapid tumor proliferation. That is the basis of taking the glycolysis as the energy generating pathway than the entire oxidative phosphorylation by tumor cells or the cancer cells. Very important, and you should know the this basic concept to answer the related question. Okay. So next come to the point, that is the tumor microenvironment. Another important thing, tumor microenvironment effect. What is this? As the neoplastic cell utilize the glycolytic pathway for energy generation, so excess lactase are produced. So there is a acidic environment inside the cell. This acidic microenvironment promotes the tumor invasion. It also facilitates the immune evasion. And all those things are associated with aggressive tumor behavior. Now let's discuss some of the clinical significance of such behavior. Tumor cells show the markedly increased glucose uptake, and this is the basis of FDG-PET imaging, PET imaging in oncology, and it is used in tumor detection, tumor staging, and therapy monitoring. It's a very important part. And again, the acidic environment in the cell due to the excess lactate production is another metabolic target, and this is a new era for the cancer therapy. So you should know all those basic concepts, and we will discuss further in our upcoming videos more about the characteristics of the neoplastic cell. So here are the high yield metabolic diagram: glucose, glycolysis, pyruvate, and Warburg pathway that is taken by the cancer cell or neoplastic cell by producing the lactate with the help of enzyme lactate dehydrogenase. So cancer cells convert glucose to lactate even when the oxygen is available, and rapid glycolysis support the biosynthesis and tumor growth. This is the catch. So here are the takeaways. Warburg effect means aerobic glycolysis in cancer cells. Glucose converted to lactate despite the oxygen availability. This is the catch. This is in contrary to the exercising muscle, where the glycolysis, the switching to anaerobic glycolysis occurs due to the low oxygen condition. But in case of cancer cell, in spite of there is enough presence of oxygen, they utilize the anaerobic process of glycolysis by transcription of the certain gene. We will discuss elaborately in our upcoming videos on that. And also, this type of behavior provides the biosynthetic intermediates for tumor proliferation, and thus explain the increased glucose uptake on FDG-PET scan. So this is all about our today's session. Welcome to iMedTech. This is Dr. Ratul Basu. Stay strategic, stay tuned. See you soon.